Well, grace and peace, everyone. My name is Dag, and welcome to the Uninvited Voice podcast. Well, grace and peace, everyone. It has been reported to me that a YouTuber, a travel vlogger, if you want to call him that, named Floyd Wallace, was arrested in Brazil for the crime of exploitation of minors. In other words, he is a pedo bear. Now, I'm not going to post the footage. There's loads of footage out there on other channels, but I think it's confined to a certain niche group of YouTubers. How did I find this man? A couple of years ago, there was a fracas about another YouTuber named Austin Holloman, who was facing repercussions in the country of Brazil because they claimed he was also exploiting not minors, but women in their country. And he had to get out of Dodge. And this was all over the news. And he ended up subsequently moving, I think, to Kenya. And he has since somewhat cleaned up his act. But he did hang around with Floyd when Floyd came to Brazil the first time. And to my understanding, Austin tried to clean up Floyd a little bit because Floyd was kind of one of those, he was very scrappy. He wore the same clothes every day. He wasn't very well kept. Whereas Austin was very clean cut and neat and nice looking. And he was trying to help him out, help his image. And I guess apparently when that didn't pan out, Austin decided to leave it go and go somewhere else and move on. Floyd, on the other hand, was very interesting because, of course, when you see him on the news and you see the two of them together, you're going to get curious and go over and look at his channel and see what he has to talk about. So Floyd, in and of itself, I mean, if he was a normal, everyday human being, he wasn't a bad-looking young man. But what I found very interesting after a while was one, he had these really red pill type of talking points. He was very defamatory about Black women and women in the United States. He claimed he wanted a traditional woman, and he was going to these other countries to look for these traditional women. And after a while, when you start looking at, catch wind of his content, one of the first things you start noticing is that, some of these young women look very young, and people would comment about it. And thus, lo and behold, it was found out that he was actually exploiting minors. I guess apparently there were two young women, young girls, 14 years old, who took a ride share to where he was staying, and the Uber driver reported it to the police, and rightly so. Now, when they broke into his place to arrest him, what they found was a series of electronics and recording devices and phones, burner phones, that he had collected throughout the years. And there were like stuffies. There was looked like a Beanie Baby and a puppet. And based on my understanding of what I'm looking at, when you look at Austin Holloman's video and you go over there, you'll notice that Austin mentioned that I guess somebody was exploiting a 6-year-old. So he didn't say the name directly. I don't know where he got the information from. I don't know if this is true, but young is young and disgusting is disgusting. Now, why would I be interested in this? The reason why I even found any of these people is because I became really interested in Black Americans who had been traveling abroad, whether or not it was male, female. I don't get involved in the whole, masculine energy, feminine energy, whatever. I don't date. It's none of my business. You guys do whatever the hell you want. If you want to date white, you want to date Hispanic, you want to date whatever, go ahead. I am out of the game and have been for a long time. However, it was very interesting having been an expat living abroad for many years in the early 2000s and returned. What I wanted to see was how other people, other Black Americans, were faring when they were moving to places like Africa, the Gambia, and from there, when you start seeing the Pan-Africanists, then you come into the know of these people that they call themselves passport bros, and they're definitely traveling for a different reason. But many of them also travel to Africa, and that is how a lot of them come into the algorithm, and you are exposed to them. And all I can say is this. Stereotypes are hard to dismantle. They stick around for a long time. Now, when I first started visiting Europe, what I noticed at the time was that there was almost a reverence for Black Americans. A lot of them listened to Black American music. A lot of them were very familiar with Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, and the myriad of entertainers. In Italy, where I lived, there was a statue of the Buffalo Soldiers, and when you walk down the street, there was this big mural of Ella Fitzgerald and all of these different Black jazz stars on the side of a theater where they had once performed. And it felt good to be indirectly associated with that legacy. But since that time, and now that everyone and anyone has a passport and everyone is traveling, I am afraid that there have been way too many people traveling to places like Japan, traveling to places like, not as much in Africa. I think they fared badly in Africa, but I'll get to that. But traveling to places in Asia, especially people who are passing as Black Americans, like Johnny Somali, people like Floyd, even, sadly to say, Austin Holloman, even though he's cleaned up his act a little bit, but he too has left a trail of crumbs that will eventually roll into a big stereotype about Black Americans in other countries. So at one time, whereas we could escape the United States, the stereotypes that plagued a lot of people, sometimes well-earned, we could escape by going to another country and being seen as Americans. Unfortunately, now, the same type of ilk, the same type of bad presence who has made it bad in this country are now starting to travel, and they are spreading, disseminating the bad vibes. So pretty soon there will be very few places to go where you can be respected as an American. Now we have all been pigeonholed as a Black American because of a lot of these people going abroad. Based on my understanding of Floyd, Floyd was someone who was in foster care and aged out of foster care. And I don't know how long he's been traveling, but he's only 29 years old. But at the same time, when you look at his videos, he was also heavily involved in some kind of weird activism in which he would film police and sort of provoke them and get arrested. And it was just bizarre, you know? only for us to see that all of this self-righteousness against the police was rooted in him trying to cover for his own proclivities. Hmm. So, you know, the blanket has been lifted. It's all out in the open. The light has been turned on. So I think it's going to get scary. Eventually, once my daughter graduates from school, I would really like to start traveling abroad and going and seeing some more of Italy, possibly even moving there again in the future, because I did enjoy living there. But I would have enjoyed living there as an unmarried woman, just staying in my apartment and going and taking pictures and eating the brioche and drinking the coffee and just minding my own business, speaking Italian. I'm not over there. When I lived over there, I was married to an Italian. And, you know, when your marriage goes downhill, you don't enjoy the place anymore. So it would have been nice to be able to go back and visit and stay and live and stuff, but I'm afraid that with all of these people traveling and making business bad, it's going to be no different than traveling here. So I may as well pack my stuff in a car and start exploring the United States because it's not going to be any different. They have made business bad. Now, with this trafficking and exploiting of minors with these young men, it's going to be even more difficult for black men to travel because they are sealing an impression. There have been so many different stories about exploitation and trafficking and stuff concerning these men going to these places and being tourists, that it's going to create a pattern, and people are going in these other countries are going to be conditioned to view black males in a certain way. Not to say that black women didn't do some damage when they were going over to Italy, because they certainly did. When I was over there, there was a group of women who would go over there every year, and they were under the impression that they were being celebrated for their beauty. And living there and seeing it while I was there, I was kind of disgusted because I said, these young women don't understand nuance. The thing about Italy is that in Italy, it's a mixed but now homogenous type of society. So although you have a range of different looks, the majority of the people, dark hair, swarthy skin, everybody sort of has that type of look, although they're very beautiful people. But men are men are men. They always seek difference. And whether or not they had a penchant, I'll say this, for blonde, 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 blonde white women from Ukraine and Eastern Europe, and middle-toned, honey-colored black women. Not to say that they didn't value other colors, but these two types, they would go crazy over. Why? Because they were different. Now, that's not to say that they weren't, exoticizing the darker skinned women, but it didn't appear to me that that was the case. However, when a lot of Black American women were going over there on their tours and going and socializing and trying to find an Italian man because they thought Italian men were just so into Black women. Italian men are into all women. They're into all women, but they whatever is different will make them look. That's all it is, just like any other man. They put their pants on just like the men over here. They are the same. No better, no worse, but the same. But a lot of Black American women, not understanding nuance, not understanding the culture, were going over there and making themselves look like utter sluts in Italy. To the point where it was just cringeworthy. Because you wanted to tell them these people are not, these men are not looking at you when you're walking down the street and thinking good thoughts. In many cases, because there was so much trafficking from Brazil, from Dominican Republic, from Nigeria, because of that, if you looked similar to those three groups of people, those three ethnic groups, and if a man was checking you out from across the street or trying to get your attention or whatever else, he may not have been celebrating your beauty. He may have been thinking that you were a woman of ill repute, someone for sale, Quanta Costa. That's what they were missing. And when you tell them that, I remember one time there was a young woman who was on my Facebook profile, and she visited Italy, and she just, she was so in love with Italian men, and she wanted to find her a nice Italian man. And she described a scenario. It was me, and there was this gay guy who designed shoes, and he was living not too far away from me. We had never met in person. But this young woman was talking about how this man walked up to her and started speaking to her in Italian, and he was really interested in her, and she told him that she was American, and he lost interest. And she says, he lost interest in me because I was American. And, it was sad, not realizing that reason why. And me and the gay guy both told her, no, he wasn't losing interest in you because you were American. He lost interest because he thought you were for sale. That's it. And she got so angry with us. She went on this diatribe about how, you can't appreciate that other people value our beauty, this, that, and the other, and this. Oh my God, it was annoying. It was annoying. But needless to say, I won't go any further with that. The fact remains that so many people are traveling nowadays, whether or not it's these black males doing the S-tourism or black women going to places like Italy thinking they're being celebrated. They're making business bad. Pretty soon, it's going to be impossible for a black American, a normal, everyday black American, to travel without dealing with some SHIT. Now, mind you, in some places you're going to, depending on how you look, you're going to deal with some SHIT anyway. But they're just making it worse. Just like here, a lot of people don't realize there are stereotypes, yes. But when you have to deal with, especially, and I noticed that if you ever shop in a predominantly black area versus shopping in a predominantly white area where you're one of the only people, you'll have more problems in the predominantly black area. The shopkeepers, the people that work in the stores, the attendants, the clerks will follow you, will act very suspicious about your existence, stuff that you would never have to deal with in any other area. Whereas, you walk in and you're just a regular, ordinary black American, halfway decent looking, dressed up, you may not have to deal with that. But the reason being, because unbeknownst to you, there may have been at least 5 people who walked into that store previous to your arrival who either stole something, spouted off at the mouth with an attitude, had some kind of crash out, complained, and just set a pattern of recognition in which they've conditioned that person over time to view your color and associate your color sort of like a Pavlovian bell. That's what's happening. So if you have to deal with that in the United States, and yes, it's been happening for a long time. It's in the Diary of an Ex-Colored Man. I believe it's page 18, where he talks about the same thing. And this was back in the 1900s, early 1900s. He's talking about the same thing, how certain characters make it bad for the general good, the whole group. And once you have those stereotypes, they're sealed in stone, and unless you're able to pass as something else, you will not escape them. And that is the danger of somebody like Floyd and some of these other cast of characters going abroad and doing stupid things, whether or not it's engaging in scams, whether or not it's escorting, whether or not it's going over and allowing yourself to be exploited because for some reason you believe that they're celebrating your beauty. Don't be naive. At any rate, you can go and find the footage of the event of Floyd being arrested and what the police officer actually said when they broke down the door. I am not going to take any chances with my fledgling channel that I'm trying to grow and download any kind of footage. I'm just not going to do it. You can go ahead and download the footage, come back, tell me what you think. Anyway, ciao, ciao. Have a great day.